Howdy, this is Nicole, and welcome to my office here at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Littleton, Colorado, where I'm serving as a pastoral intern. So I was a bit perplexed about what I would talk about at the beginning of this week. I don't know really what I stewarded until I've read the book. I enjoyed all 5 chapters in the introduction, but chapters 1 and 2 really spoke to me. Chapter 1, because I have been trying desperately to get hold of my schedule for at least the last 10, 15 years. My calendar runs my life, and I can totally see where I have allowed my calendar to dictate who I was for so much of the time. The last couple of years, I've really been able to get a hold of it and put my priorities first rather than the calendars. I've learned an incredible word: no. It's a very powerful word, and it has really helped me get hold of who I am as a pastor and as a therapist. You see, I'm also a psychotherapist in the state of Colorado, and for 3 years I had a private practice, and my first inclination was to book as many clients as I possibly could in order to make as much money as I possibly could. There was a time where I would schedule 5 or 6 clients a day and work 4 or 5 days a week, and that's a lot to carry. Yes, the money was good, but people go to therapy because something in their life isn't going the way they hoped or planned. So I take a lot of their emotional overflow onto myself and help them process it, but that's a lot for me to carry, and I wasn't scheduling enough time for me to process and release what they had given me, release it to God. So I had to learn to back off and schedule time for me to rejuvenate. And that's been really important, especially these past couple years, being in private practice and also being a seminary student and going through CPE, which was mind-blowing, and then now as a pastoral intern. How do I balance my schedule in order to do anything worthwhile? I can do a lot of things, but if I do a lot of things or too many things, and I'm not able to do anything terribly well. And I wanted to be a good therapist, so I cut down the number of clients I saw every week. And that kind of jumps into a segue to the next chapter, stewarding people at the end of their life. When I was in CPE, I worked in a level 3 trauma center in Westminster, Colorado, St. Anthony Hospital. And I walked with 13 families as they lost family members. A couple of them were really, really traumatic. Doctors and nurses going into the emergency room, CPR as the person came out of the ambulance, and they didn't survive. How do you walk with a family when there is a traumatic death? And that became the challenge. How to bring Christ into the room when somebody who suffered or endured an unexpected death. That was difficult. It was also difficult to walk with people when they knew that death was imminent and had time to prepare. And sometimes those periods before death, that sometimes a week or 48 hours or is as difficult as the death itself. How do you sit with the family and help them process what's going on, how to let go? Not only the person who was dying, a lot of the times they were comatose or not terribly responsive. So I would do anointing of the body and anointing of the healing, and then anointing the body after the death. But a lot of the times I was there for the families to help them cope and deal with end-of-life situations. And as a therapist, I help people deal with transitions. As a transgender Latina, the majority of my clients in my counseling practice were going through some sort of life transition. And that involved sometimes losing family members, being kicked out of their church, losing their jobs. And so it's not just a transition of who they are as a gendered being in this world, but how to redefine themselves as unemployed, or how to redefine themselves as a person without a blood relatives to stand by them? Where do you find community? How do you rebuild your life and rebuild community? And one of the big things that I referred to people to were support groups, and finding other individuals who could commiserate, so to speak, find the same type of issues that they're dealing with, so that they can build a community together. Because that's what we really are in church, is a community of Christ. Unfortunately, there were too many people in my private practice going through gender identity issues who had been asked to leave their faith communities. So a lot of what I do as a transgender Latina of faith is try to create those faith communities for people to come back to and rediscover who they are as a child of God. So stewarding people on many different levels, stewarding myself so that I am able to have the wherewithal to endure and move forward with people. I have to take care of my own emotional well-being. And sometimes that takes the form of sitting and watching movies. The day after Thanksgiving, that Friday and Saturday, I had planned to do a lot of catching up on some reading, rereading some chapters that I've really enjoyed, and then working on the final project. But I found myself exhausted, emotionally exhausted. And so I basically watched movies for 2 days, sitting in the living room with my mother watching My Big Fat Greek Wedding, or sitting there and watching Star Wars because I just love Star Wars, getting out and getting that that distance away from the man who is in my congregation now, who is dying, who lived an incredible 98 years, but he is looking at the last days of his life. So I've been walking with his family for the last month or so as his body slowly shuts down. And so stewarding time, stewarding people at the end of life, stewarding people through life transitions, that's what I steward in my life. I have been given the gifts and talents to be able to be with people and separate myself from them so that I can take on some of their emotion and some of their fears and give it to God. But I also have to realize I have to take care of myself. So I've been doing much better at finding ways to do self-care, finding ways to be there for other people, and I think I'm doing a fairly good job. I feel like I'm thriving right now. So that's my stewardship story. Thank you.